Good morning, Voyagers. I am the last Omnitech, your favorite robot American, and welcome to another Gentry, Dolaan, Ain't No Fascist Helldivers 2 fan comic art stream. It's been a hot little minute. Apologies for taking so long to go live today, folks. It's just how it goes sometimes. Turns out, when people call you all morning, and your computer needs to update repeatedly, and you're also grappling with an increased lack of space because Helldivers just dropped a huge update. Yeah, kind of hoses you. So I've been sort of juggling all that this morning. We're finally back in the grid of it, and I hope you all have been, hope you all are alright. We're going to be doing a slightly smaller stream today because unfortunately this is bumping up against every other part of my life now. So, let's talk about what we're doing today. But first, I want to take a quick moment to say, if you like my content, if you like my webcomic art streams or my webcomics, if you like what I do, please make sure you go, like, subscribe the video right now. Go down there, click the little button. You don't need to click the bell if you don't want to. I know how annoying that is. But at least subscribe and at least like. And comment if you can. It helps me see them and feel better. And also, I see them and read them and respond to all of them, so... Hey, Koopa, good to see you. Furthermore, I just want to take a quick moment to shout out my incredible Patreon patrons right now. My Tier 1 patrons, Ampersand, Heinrich, and Atlas. You all are incredible. And my Tier 2 patron, Necronomulus. And a reminder, if you guys want to see more content, including Gentry, Dolaan, Ain't No Fascist, and other things, the more money you guys throw my Patreon, the faster and more efficient I can make it. So, I appreciate you guys. Thank you all for bankrolling what is probably the most entertaining and fulfilling creative endeavor in my life. So, we're back to it. How are you doing today, Koopa? Hope you're having a good day. I am just getting things set up on this end. 1 second. Really glad I can mute my mic, because you all did not need to hear the sound that just came out of my nose. Alright, so, let's close all that. And let's get to it. So, today my plan is going to be sort of fiddling with Gentry's armor design. My plan is to sort of work around that as best as I can. You guys are familiar with the old design that I've been rocking for Gentry for quite some time. This is his original, like, when I launched the comic, what I wanted his armor to eventually look like design. And I needed to get it there, so to get there, we had to go through Chuhi first. That is his current Chuhi design. Which, I'm not gonna lie, I've become more and more attached to as I've been drawing him. There's something very enjoyable about the elements of drawing that character. But I need to combine both of these two elements into a modern, I can draw this repeatedly version, which is the biggest issue I run with Gentry's old design. Gentry's old design is very, very simple, but as a result, it's also a pain in the ass to draw, in a weird kind of way. There's a lot of flat, white, angular surfaces that require gentle shading, and I can't really do it as easily as, say, the Chewy Survivor, which has a lot of areas that are obscured by cloth, a lot of areas that are flat surfaces or highly angular surfaces, so it's easier to draw them in segments. And so we're going to sort of work between those two. There are some things we're keeping on Gentry's old design, just to make things very clear. I actually really like his upper body armor. I don't see much need to retool this very much. Like, some slight modifications maybe, but nothing too intense. And I do very much enjoy his helmet. I think that is perhaps one of the best helmets I've ever drawn. So I'm keeping that helmet design. We might incorporate some slight elements of the Chuhi Survivor into it, because it helps frame the helmet a little better. Namely, I'm thinking, if we're looking at Gentry's Chuhi helmet here versus the old helmet. So, I might add this bar on the bottom to help, like, line up the chin. And I might also, like, slightly refine the facial design a little bit here. He has right now, like, in the old design, this kind of Gundam-like, almost like beard thing there. And it's a little too angular for my taste. I kind of prefer this arrangement of the mouth, where he has, like, the two plates up here, and then there's, like, a sort of a little chin piece. So that way, if he lands on his chin, he doesn't have extra leverage to snap his neck, which is a big thing I'm thinking of. as someone who just got kicked by a Bile Titan so hard all his legs and arms came off you last night. Trying to avoid dismembering my boy. I also really like the antenna, but I might straighten them out a little more. Right now they lay very flat, and I might make it where they're like movable, is my thought. So like right now, if we were to talk about Gentry's current helmet design, his Chewie Survivor design basically has, and this is where I'm going to get two pencils and be a goofball on camera. This is where if you guys were on Twitch, you'd probably Twitch clip me. So, grab this. So, currently, Gentry's Chewie Survivor design is very Kamen Rider. Literally that. It's two antennas coming right off the top of the head. Very Mantis-esque. But his actual, like, and this would be what it's like in profile. Now, the problem with that is that Gentry's old armor design is actually much more angular. So as opposed to sticking up, they sit flat back, which I kind of like the design of. But the problem is drawing it's a little tougher from the side and from, like, weirder angles. So I'll probably compromise it and make it where they can sort of move a little bit. Like they're on levers. That might be a better solution. So we'll work with that. Right now I've got Gentry's undersuit pretty much completely done. So I've been thinking a lot about, like, Gentry now that he's cyborged out, and I feel like we should take a moment to talk about how Gentry is very cyborged out. He's not just a standard diver in that respect. He is what we called a cyber operative, or a psyop. Quoting you, Red, Red Right Hand, for those of you who don't know, the incredible creator of Trader Squad, who is sort of the one who pioneered this, like, trader diver thing that's been going on. Gentry is, right now anyway, very borged out. I'm going to show the safest version I can for YouTube. Here we go. Because I have a not safer version, a safer work version of this that I, you know, reference occasionally. So, this is what Gentry looks like underneath the armor from the back. He is extensively modified at this point. Angle this a little further down. There we go. So he's extensively modified. His shoulder blades, basically from his, like, trapezius muscles up, he's been borged. So he does have a human skeleton under there, but it's been reinforced. He has musculature that's been largely replaced. This is actually a fun consequence of what it means to have a full arm replacement. Everyone always thinks of the arm as kind of this thing that just sort of starts here at the shoulder, but really it's your whole chest and back. That's why guys who are pump iron, and like especially ones who do bench press, tend to have really ripped backs. That's all there to support your arms. So Gentry's metal arms will be supported by enhanced musculature on the rest of his torso. And that needs to be anchored to an enhanced skeletal structure. And why am I bringing all this up? Simple. If he was just wearing cloth, and he moved at the speeds he can move, exerted the force he can exert, which we've seen, the guy can punch his way through Devastators, literally with his bare metal hands now. That's a great way to tear your clothes repeatedly. He's not the Incredible Hulk. It's not like he's going to split them, but more like when you split your pants because your range of motion exceeds what your pants can do. That's kind of what he'd be doing to his shirt and his clothes all the time. So his current, like, modified undersuit is actually made of basically a very lighter weave version of the same muscular system that he's using for his own artificial muscles. This is just a more, I guess we could call it industrialized usage of it. I have a specific term to describe the muscle type. 3M weave, that's what I call it. So, memory metal musculature. It's basically a memory metal woven through the fabric. And it's more or less the equivalent of, like, exercise clothes underneath there. So it breathes much more easily, it moves with him, and also it exerts force. So it kind of helps him a little bit. Sort of like the undersuit of a Spartan 2, a little bit. A lot less crazy, though. Let's go more like a Spartan 3 spy armor. To call it semi-powered would even be too nice. It's more like clothing that moves with you. It's not really made to, like, multiply his force significantly. So, again, I'm making a Helldiver here, not a Spartan. His pants are going to be largely the same. I figure he has that same memory metal muscle undersuit layer that's going all the way down, but the pants are a little bit more rugged, and so I figure they'll work a little better. So let's get to the actual, like, drawing part of this shit. I know I've been bandying this about for a while now. Also, I've slightly tuned up his face design than what it used to be. Turns out having a higher resolution lets you do better. Gentry now is a little bit messier than he was before. He's been through the ringer. He now leaves like 2 strands of hair like hanging down, mostly because he just doesn't care to put them back. And because for me, visually, that gives me an immediate identifier of him in any scene. In the same way that, as an example, Dolaan has like the sort of faux hawk that they've got going. The half cut. And we have other characters like very identifiable hairstyles. That's his identifiable hairstyle now. So, let's get to the actual armor plating. I've never drawn Gentry's armor from behind, and that's going to be interesting. So let's start with this new one. And this is going to be Gentry full armor. Armor plating. And we should probably actually open this up. We can actually just do this in here. So let's see. Let's start with our forward one. I'm going to call this the oversuit. Or armor plating. We'll just go armor plating. So I've been debating what I'm going to be doing for Gentry's armor for a bit now. And I think our best bet here is going to be if we go all the way over here. Where did I have the colors schemes? Oh, right. I haven't made a color scheme swatch for his armor yet. Lucky me. Alright. Good news, I have Gentry's old armor to do that with. So we'll start with the darkest color. We're going to go up here to our swatches. Move this down. Move this up. Armor plating. Okay, so we start with our darkest color. And that's going to be like a light gray kind of deal right here. Our next color is going to be a slightly more eggshell white. We're then going to go into... Actually, there's like one mid-tone here I missed. Here we go. Okay. So we start with this one. We work into the next. Then we have our mid-tone armor. And then we have the brightest shade on his armor, which is a near pure white. I originally debated going with like an ivory, but I kind of like the idea of his armor being like a little cleaner than that, a little more surgical. It gives him, as a Helldiver, one of like the only clean looks in Helldivers. Most Helldivers' armor, even though it's often like parade quality, is not meant to be clean. That's the whole point. Like, it's meant to be coated in gore constantly. But Gentry's armor reflects the fact that he works behind the scenes, primarily more. So let's start with that. We're gonna borrow a color here. Start with our base armor. We're gonna go to our forward armor plating, and then over here we'll do the same. Save this before I go any further so I don't lose anything, because I've been hyper nervous since I've had to do this, like, PC maintenance. Here we go. Hold on. Gotta open that. There you go, a little better. Beautiful. Okay. So we're gonna start with our forward armor. So Gentry's armor has always been sort of angular by design. It's kind of the point. So he's got a pair of shoulder pads here. They sit comfortably over his collarbone. He's got this gorget here, this angular gorget, which is the neck armor, by the way, if you're curious about, like, medieval armor and stuff. A gorget is neck armor. We're just going to reduce the opacity of this just a hair so I can see more clearly what I'm working on. So I got to make sure I get this right. He's facing slightly off-center. And we're just going to slightly, like, re-angle that just a little bit. There we go. Looking pretty good. And we can make that a little longer. Oh, hello. There we go. Okay. Then I usually make it very, like, angular. The plate right here. It tends to sit a little bit forward. It's kind of like a car hood, almost. And then he has these two side plates that sit on the side of his chest here. And they kind of frame his tits a little bit. Give his boobs a bit of a window, you know? Our boy worked hard for those gains. He amputated those arms himself. Not really, but he did have to amputate arms. So we're going to re-angle these a little bit so they sit a little more natively, because I need that plate in the middle. Because in here is where the center of his, like, chest glow is, because I think that chest glow is really important. And then we're going to have his shoulder pads, which sit neatly over his existing arms. Now that you guys have seen what the undercarriage of his arms look like, you kind of see why he has his armor plating the way he does. These literally click over his existing armor plating to provide him with a little bit of extra defense. Also to make him look a little bit less terrifying for some of the Helldivers he encounters. Because a lot of Helldivers got beef with automatons, and they should, rightfully, I would say. But since Gentry needs to work with both automatons and Helldivers, he needs a little bit of both, as it were, in his DNA, in his visual DNA. So we go from that. He's got these arm cuffs here that I've been working on. That hug his biceps. And also kind of act like constraints on him a little bit. So this sort of prevents him from exerting so much force it becomes noticeable. For the most part, Gentry is a normal Helldiver. He just happens to have the ability to kind of go ape when he needs to. So here we go. So we get that. That cuff goes there. That goes there. All right. So it's looking pretty decent so far, and the armor's much more, like, understandable visually now. Now, as far as his arms go, his arms are basically the same as he had on Shuhei. So he's got this new flipping arm effect that works pretty well. I have one particular, like, reference I want to use for it. If I can find the damn thing. Here we go. It's the flick of the wrist. We all know this scene. Or at least everyone who's been watching this, or reading my webcomic. The flick of the wrist is where Gentry shows what his cybernetic limbs can do. Where they're basically hollow. The interior of his forearm is hollow, and it contains a weapon mount. which he normally puts like a grenade launcher or something in. I can't wait to give him the ultimatum. That's going to be very funny. Alright, cool. So that means that his arm needs to be a little boxier in certain places. So he's got this kind of armored thing going on for his arm. I hate that it does that sometimes. Okay, cool. So we have one segment here that's pretty much straight all the way down. Goes to here, about midway up the arm. It angles in a little harsher. And on the other parts, we have the rest of that arm, which kind of boxes out as well. So you should really do it a little closer up here. It should be further up. There we go. It doesn't really have a cuff on it because the whole thing is made to sort of expand out. Here we go. Then we cover the back of the hands, which had this sort of flat plate over them. It's like the back of a glove or a gauntlet. His fingers are armored now. And I sort of give him, like, these metal knuckles. I kind of just find it entertaining that he has, like, actual metal brass knuckles basically built into his hands. That's just very fun for me visually. Cool. So already he's looking a little better. Our boy's got his aesthetic, his silhouette back. It's a little too thick here, so I'm going to slender this down a little bit. Now that he's back in Seif territory, he can actually refine his bionics a little bit. So they don't have to be quite as hulking as they currently are. There we go. Sort of comes to a divot here. Same thing here. Back of the arms look pretty good. Nice. Okay, that feels a little better. Awesome, so we got that. We'll do the other side. Now, I just need to make sure I remember the inside of his forearm is the part that expands, that flips open, right? It should be. So I pop this open. Yeah, so the underside of his forearm splits down the middle. Kind of got a little bit of like a Sangheili arm, in a way. So that means that the underside of his arm here would split. So we sort of put that down there like that. We carry that down. So I just got to remember that for the purpose of drawing him in the future. That this forearm here splits down the middle. And then we take that here. Beautiful. Cool, so his forearms already look good. A little off angle there, though, so we'll slightly fix that. We'll adjust it a little bit. Slender it down a tad, because again, he's in Seif turf now, so his arms can actually be refined a little bit. Sort of taper off about here. Cool. We do the same thing with the backs of his hands. Just to make things very easy for me. And then we have his knuckles. Cool. So that gives us a baseline silhouette of what we're working with here. And again, if anybody's got any questions about the comic or anything, or where it's going to be going, what I'm going to be doing, now's the time to ask. So we're going with that. We do have like a chest plate thing that he's got normally, which I might do here, at least in parts. Yeah, I feel like smaller chest plates works here pretty well. Alright. And just a reminder for everybody, for those of you who've been watching the latest Gentry or reading the latest Gentry bits, I appreciate every single one of you. It will be back in the 8th of July or the 21st of June, depending on whether you're a patron or not. Namely, a paying patron. So if you're interested, please follow the Patreon. At very least, follow it. You'll get more news that way. You'll actually get to see what I'm doing and when I'm doing it every week. That is basically the biggest selling point I got for you there. I hate that it keeps shrinking all my windows. It's very aggravating. Okay, I'll probably close this at this point. There we go. Alright, so you've got this. Got Gentry's old armor design. Okay. So this is where we're going to do the most changes. Gentry's old armor had this really unfortunate habit of having a groin plate. And I'm okay with a groin plate. A good groin plate's fine to me. But the big issue with having a groin plate like this is that it actually impedes his movement. You can see his pants go underneath it. And it also just really unfortunately calls attention to a rather underdeveloped part of his armor. He's got this, like, half cape on his back, which is fine. I thought it looked cool. But the half cape is designed to cover up part of your legs to make it easier to see, to, like, you know, to draw a character. That's the visual purpose. That's not the mechanical purpose in real life. In real life, having, like, a half cape or something like that was primarily done either for show or in, like, combat. Having something like a skirt would actually obscure your legs and make it harder to stab your legs. But, you know, not that much. And so, yeah, I just really didn't like Gentry's old lower leg design. So I think this is where we're going to start borrowing heavily from his Shuhei Survivor design, where I think I actually really made his legs a lot better developed. So as a start, I'm keeping his, like, the top shirt, like the top, like, the skirt from his tucked-in undersuit. I think that's a good look. It helps obscure his bits a little bit. I don't need to put a giant dick plate on him. And likewise also, I like his, like, side plates. This is a thing that I'm not sure how many folks who actually, like, watched the comic noticed, or have read the comic and noticed, but, like, those plates are actually powered. So when he runs, when he's, like, overclocking, they actually glow and match his bionics. And they're an easy way to track his movement and provide me with sort of a light bloom effect. Even in the explosion, they're there. So, like, I kind of like the idea of keeping that. I think that's a good idea. So we'll keep his lower limbs very similar to his older design. Okay. I'm just going to open up the boy. And yes, we've got this. And we've got his refined design. So with his refined design, he's got a pair of plates that come roughly around the sides of his legs. They sort of stop about here. On the other side, they wouldn't be as visible because of the angle. There we go. So he's got these knee pads, which would start about here. And unfortunately, this is how, like, the start of a multi-layered painting goes. You need to lay down that base color. Unfortunately, while you're doing, it doesn't really, like, look that impressive, so it's not much to write home about. But I promise you, in a few minutes, this is going to sort of explode very quickly. So we're going to go from this. So his knee pads come out to about there. Same thing here. They're just sort of this nice convenient angular shape for me to draw. Cool. Now we go to his lower greaves, which sort of nicely mesh into the shape of his knee pads. Now, there's going to be a major change in the design of his greaves here very shortly. It's one I've been debating for a bit here. But I think I've finally come to the understanding that I don't like his ankles in the other armor. Not that it's bad, it's more that they're exposed. And that's very disturbing to me. And I imagine, since Gentry and I share a lot of the same DNA, psychologically, he would do something about that. So, my thought is, Gentry's armored his ankles. So sort of pull this around the back, so this sort of wraps around. Because you want to make that very clear that his whole leg is shielded there. And then we sort of have that belt going there, we have a belt here. And we have a belt sort of around the back there. Okay, so now we're going to get the actual ankles. And I've been debating how I'm going to handle this for a hot minute, because there's a lot of different ways to do ankles. So we can either do it with a very, like... I'm figuring a Gundam. I'm figuring a Gundam sort of aesthetic here. A Gundam with a lot of Kamen Rider in his DNA. So let's do a little bit less Kamen Rider for a minute. Let's do a little Gundam. Also, Gentry's enough of a dork to have probably watched Gundam. It's probably illegal to watch in Super Earth, because it's very anti-war messaging. But I suspect Gentry's mom probably smuggled him a little bit of that. Oh, I mentioned Gentry's mom. I probably shouldn't have done that yet. Oops. Guess you'll have to pay attention to the webcomic and see how that turns out. There we go. So you've got these thicker lower legs now that'll let him kind of tank a little more damage. Not really, you know, spoilers, teasers, more like. I have mentioned that Gentry does have a mother, more than once, and she lives on Meridian. And right now, we're at part of the comic where Meridian is not yet a black hole, so that's a bit off. That's a bit off. Okay, cool. So that looks pretty good. We're going to get to the block on the underlayer here, and just sort of, and just sort of pull that off a little bit. Because we don't need all of that. We're going to turn the undersuit and oversuit to max again. Cool, so we can see a little more clearly how this is sort of meant to sit. And likewise, we can sort of get into here on this part. Cool. So that gives us an immediate, like, slightly better look as to what his armor is going to look like. Oh, I almost forgot. His belt! His belt is, in fact, part of his metal. So we're going to catch that in there. Alright. Cool. So we got ourselves the beginning of his armor design. Now, I'm going to do a quick thing, and I'm going to actually catch some of these areas in black so I can more distinctly, like, highlight the divisions between them. So we're literally doing panel lining. This will help provide us the illusion of shadow underneath these. as well as also give us a slight more separation once we get to the parts where I'm going to be drawing that out. I like the idea that that, like, central glowy bit actually cuts into that lower abdominal plate. Just a hair. A little bit of Iron Man DNA in this biz. Here we go. And this is going to give us a slight bit more of an edge. Here we are. And since this is all in the armor plating layer, I can all draw it as one flat piece of art, and then if I want to show what Gentry looks like underneath the armor, because he's disengaged in a scene or something, and I want to see what he looks like when he's getting kind of undressed or disrobed. What's the word? Doffing his armor, as opposed to donning it. If I want to do that, all I got to do is just turn a layer off, and I've got his entire Under Armour suit right there on display, ready to go. I also didn't do these details because they're literally his cybernetic limbs, so there's not much need to do that. We already have reference for it. So, there we go. Okay, so we've got that. We're going to get his belt a little bit. Just a little bit. Just a hair. Angle that in a tad. Hone those shapes. And there we go. Beautiful. Alright, so we've got that. Let's get the upper part here. I normally don't do really sharp outlines like this, but for a comic it actually helps a lot. At least when you're trying to differentiate different objects from each other. And then we can just sort of take this bit here, angle it all the way down. Beautiful. Alright. Gentry's already looking a little better with that extra armor plating there. And now we get the head. This is where things get interesting. So if we go back to Gentry's original design again, and I sort of close that a little more. There we go. So Gentry's original design makes it so that this literally comes out of his collar. So, how are we going to handle that here? I suspect we'll do the helm separately. Yeah, I'll make a separate helm layer. You should probably put a cloak as well above that. Hold on. Let's see. Sorry about that. This is one of those, I've been getting calls all morning. I'm still getting messages right now. Brother in Christ, doing this on mobile's agony. Okay. There we go. That's how you know it's a stream, folks. I get completely waylaid by bullshit. Okay, so here we go. So now I get to figure out how I'm going to incorporate this. I think that's how I'll do it. So I'll start with that. Pull that around. And then we take this, put this on the underside, and round it off a little bit. And then we do the same thing here with this. Like that. Cool. So we can see there's like sort of a sconce in there a little bit. Likewise, I want to give Gentry the little spots for his glowy bits, because those are important. We gotta have glowy bits. It's an anime protagonist. You gotta have blue hair. We're gonna put that there. We're gonna start actually shaping some of this. A little too far with that last one. There we go. Cool. And this is where I start adding some shapes in. There we go. So now we got a little bit of the shading here, sort of denote the shape. We take this, because this is actually not just one flat plate. It actually does have a bit of like a three-dimensionality to it. Sort of comes to about here. Then it sort of turns up. Again, kind of like the hood of a car. The same thing here. And here. Awesome. So we're already getting some shaping in. And already Gentry's armor is looking a little bit more real, as it were. Okay, now for this part. This part's going to be easy. 75%. I really don't need to do too much to that. There's not really much shading in this part because it's really more like there's a giant hole in it. Cool. It's a little off-center. I wanted a little more centered there. Cool. So that gives us the spot for his glow later. 25%. The same thing here. Cool. And we're just going to sort of fill this area in over here a little more. We're going to come back over this, but this is at least giving us the silhouette of what we're working with. Let's get back to 75 for this area here. Okay. I'm kind of curious what part of the comic folks are most excited about, honestly. Like, what faction are they most interested in seeing Gentry run into? What arc do they really want? Are they, like, really excited to see Gentry go through? Because the whole point of this comic is I'm going to basically be going through each phase of Super Earth's history in comic. Because we started off with Operation Legitimate Understanding. And now we're moving into the next part. Here we go. And we're going to move this over here. We're going to put this like a gentle, smooth slope. Let me get those little sconce areas for his glowy bits. Already looking great. I'm really pleased with how this is turning out. So this will give us a much more clearly laid out aesthetic and body design. Now comes the hard part. So sort of pull that through. And now we give this single panel line down the middle of the underside of the forearm. There we go. That's not looking too bad. Let's get back to that armor plating level. Put this at 25%. I believe I said put it at 25%. There we go. Here we are. We can kind of put a little bit of this there too to sort of indicate there's a little extra shading going on. Cool. I also need to do a little extra shading on here, too. We're going to go down here, 75%. Let's angle this out. This part's always going to be a little bit messier. Get the knuckles. We get that panel there for that thumb. And we're just going to sort of mish that off there a little bit. There we go. 25% it. Get some shading going. Cool. So already his arms are looking better too. I'm very happy with that. I'm gonna probably just reference the comic for the way the interior of his arm functions, for convenience, and save myself from having to redraw literally every element of him ever over again, when I've already drawn it once, and I don't need to draw it again and again and again. I'm already doing that enough for the comic. I don't need to give myself extra steps, you know? Okay, cool. And then we angle that in on both sides. Maybe the same thing here. 25%. Here we go, to more clearly denote those areas. Not bad. A little too sharp there, though. I want to saw that down a little. %, again, because we need to denote that this is not a completely, like... That's not all the same level. Cool. So you have Gentry's arms, you have his belt, now we're on to his legs. Alright, so we now have the segments in here. I really like these kind of like inset areas. And we're going to add just like the edge. There we go. And then we can just sort of take these, put some belt bits here. And then pull them tight. I figure his pants are a little bit more form-fitting than they originally were. Because again, you know, he can't have like the super loose pants that'll get a lot of friction and a lot of the ability to tear if he sprints or does something kind of nuts. So these are a little bit more exercisey, a little tighter form-fitting. Cool, that looks pretty decent to me. We're going to do the same thing down here. Put this to 25%. Just to, again, denote a different shape. Here we go. Okay, we get that there. Okay, so we got ourselves a pretty good knee plate. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, just mimic that same shape. Put that closer to 75 again, so I can clearly denote it. Let me do the same thing here. Okay, then we sort of pull that to about this point. Cool. 25%, so we can get some shading in on this biz. Let's vague that out a little more, shall we? Cool. And I do the same thing for the underlayer here. These are meant to sort of very closely mimic the same shape. We do the same thing. Add a buckle and a belt. Because these do need to be strapped on. They're not like magically attached. They're still made with Seif tech. So they need to abide by Seif rules. And Seif apparently hasn't found out a better way to buckle things on than a belt. Or a zipper. So we work with what we got. 21st century clothing tech. Let's go. I said 25, not 100, but sure. Cool. So you got that leg already shaded out. Get the belt around the back. This will still give us like a vague sort of silhouette for his leg. The whole point of me designing him like this is so that way he reads as human still at a distance. So when he's sprinting, these armor panels basically, like, cover his calf, but they replicate the shape in just a more angular way. So, mechanically speaking, there's almost no distinction. Okay, so now we're going to go to this one. 25%. So it'd be underneath him, so it's probably more likely how the shading would be divided. Okay. That gives us, again, a bit of a silhouette to work with. And now we get to the cuffs here. This is where I'm going to have a lot of fun, because I really got to sort of redesign these things from scratch. So, again, we're going for a slightly Gundam-esque feel. But they need to be able to move out of the way when he's sprinting. So I think this is our solution here. It'll still let him sprint, more or less. But it'll armor his ankles a little bit so he's not gonna, you know, trip over and break his ankles like he's 80 years old. We can get in the underlayer here, remove some of this. 25. Then we can sort of get in the crack here and cover this up a little bit. By adding a little more shading onto the side of the ankle, we kind of hide some of the parts of it, which makes it a little easier for me to work with. Cool. So we're almost done with Gentry's armor plating today. We might finish in time. Which is funny, because I wasn't planning on that. But here we are. So if we zoom out here a little bit, just a little bit, and I sort of take the way they look on the other side into account. Okay, so looking at the leg plating, we can pull them up to about there. They can come to the front like that. And we'll do the same thing on top. Come down to about here. And they're slightly curved on the outside. So we need to see the exact join because I don't know what it looks like. And that is more than enough for me because I'm not actually designing a real suit of armor. I'm designing a webcomic character's suit of armor. So it doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to look good enough to sort of hand wave away any concerns. Alright. Beautiful. And just like that, Gentry's combat armor, at least from the front, is more or less done. The back, I'm not sure how much he would really have. I figured he'd still have, like, the chest plate. So I'm just going to quickly vague out something fast here. And we'll add some extra layers onto it before we go. We're going to flip this around, make a black one. Like a black layer, 75. This will sort of get us over. Beautiful. Now we got the back plating, and I figure it'll probably very closely conform with the scapular plates on his back, just for convenience here. Because that's where the majority of motion is going to be from his cybernetics. And then we'll probably have like a little part in the back here, just to make sure if he gets shot in the back of the back, he's not going to instantly just die. Here we go. And we'll just segment it out. Every 2 vertebrae will have a plate. Oh, we won't even go all the way down to the bottom. And then we'll just have 2 little plates here. Cool. Now I'm going to swap to this. We're going to hit darken, because that means it won't ever override that. So now we'll see exactly what his back armor looks like in one pass. Or at least at most 2. Nice. Pretty manageable. Right out the gate. That right there can be drawn repeatedly and not drive me utterly insane. And it has a little bit of a dragonfly motif to it. So for all you Kamen Rider fans, yeah, it's there. It's there. He's still there. Alright, so we're going to go this into normal mode. And I'm just going to start fixing the shape. And we're going to probably close it off in the next 2 minutes. So again, I want to thank everybody who's been tuning in today and who actually popped in. I appreciate all of you. I hope you all enjoyed watching this. And whatever you were up to or doing today, I hope it was worth it. I'd like to encourage everyone who's currently out there, please, remember, like, comment, subscribe. We're an incredibly small channel. I'm still growing, and I'm still very excited to do a bunch of new projects, including but not limited to some wargaming stuff on this channel. I'm going to be doing some Mordheim and some Trench Crusade on this, along with one-page rules. I'm going to keep doing more webcomics and art, as we are going to get used to that. And also on top of that, I kind of want to do a couple of fun lore videos. But we'll get to there when we get there. In the meantime, thank you guys so much for tuning in. It means the world as always. And again, for all you folks who are currently subscribed to my Patreon, either Tier 1 or Tier 2, thank you guys so much. Ampersand, Atlas, and Heinrich, as well as also Necronomulus at my Tier 2. You guys are the wind beneath my wings, and you're the reason I can continue to make these projects. And for anyone who's interested in seeing more about these, including the webcomics, I highly recommend, please go subscribe on Patreon. Even if it's just like a little bit, I appreciate it, I see it, and I thank each of you. And, yeah, with that, I just want to say, thank you folks so much, and I'll see you all out there. Keep diving, Helldivers. Peace.